Welcome to the Trellix Spotlight series. My name is Nick, and I will be your host. Today's session will focus on an overview of endpoint detection and response with Trellix Wise. This webinar is a brief overview covering common use cases and scenarios regarding this topic. It is not intended to be all-encompassing. If assistance is needed, please contact Trellix Technical Support. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them in the Q&A window. This webinar may run longer or shorter based on your participation, and we recommend asking as many questions as you can to make the most of this series. If the Q&A window is not displayed, click the tab at the bottom of your session window and click on the Q&A icon. We will answer the questions during the final section of this webinar. If you experience any audio issues during the webcast, please drop and attempt to reconnect. Our speakers today are Joe Malenfant and Chad Roesle. Joe is the Director of Product Marketing for Trellix's vast endpoint security portfolio. He brings over 15 years of InfoSec experience to the role, spanning endpoint, network, cloud, identity, and IoT. Joe is always eager to dig into the complexity of a technology in an effort to distill it and be consumable by the masses. He has worked for both innovative startups and large technology companies. Prior to joining Trellix, he held leadership positions at Ping Identity, Vectra AI, and Cisco Systems, where he launched their first EDR solution. Chad has over 20 years of experience across many areas of tech. He started as an engineer before moving to product management more than 10 years ago. He has had product responsibility with EDR and XDR, MDR, incident response, threat hunting, pen testing, enterprise solutions, services, and channel. At Trellix, Chad is Director of Product Management for our EDR products. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe and Chad.
All right, outstanding. Thank you so much, Nick. So with a very obvious agenda, we're going to really dive into endpoint security market overall. I want to cover a few key trends that we've observed and that are really driving the market for the last few years. These trends have really given rise to endpoint detection and response, and not just at large organizations, but also medium and small. And since I'm sure no one here has actually been living under a rock, we do need to address the reality of artificial intelligence and specifically generative AI. And then we're going to finish with automating investigations using generative AI, and Chad is going to walk us through how we actually make that a reality. So please feel free to ask questions, and let's dive into what is actually bringing us to where we are today. Okay, let me start with a basic fact. Not a lot of attackers are out there breaking in. They're not looking for vulnerabilities and creating an exploit because it's time-consuming and incredibly expensive, with generally a low return on investment. Phishing is just so much more productive, right? It's easier, and humans tend to be the weakest link. And that's why the top trend driving endpoint security is really around the fact that attackers are logging into systems and not breaking in. If you've seen the Verizon data breach investigations report over the last few years, this has been a constant trend. So get a password manager so that people can stop using password 12345 exclamation mark everywhere. All right, the second one is really that the other second major trend that we're observing is that early prevention is becoming, it's obviously incredibly important, but it's becoming quite opaque. A lot of attacks in the early stages, especially with the MITRE attack matrix, look relatively benign. It's hard to tell when things are malicious at this stage while attackers are scanning your network. So yes, while we need to protect against all the known malicious techniques and activities, the threats to be concerned about are the ones that move past those prevention techniques. And that's what brings us to the third trend, which is really moving past prevention and attacks that are living off the land. This basically means attackers are using legitimate applications and processes to gain a foothold, move laterally across your environment, and then exfiltrate data. If you want a pretty famous example of this, it was the solar flare attack, right? So where they actually compromised the supply chain and used legitimate applications to move around within an environment. We see this happening on a pretty regular basis using PowerShell, remote desktop protocol, or like WMI interface, as well as your cloud tooling to establish a persistent presence. Now, let me be clear. These trends have been going on for a little while, and that's just the definition of a trend, right? And frankly, it's why we need endpoint detection and response. Fun fact, EDR was actually first coined back in 2013 by none other than Gartner. Coincidentally, it was the same year that MITRE released the first version of their attack framework. Now, at the time, the cyber kill chain was pretty popular, but the team at MITRE thought it was really needing to go down to another level into the techniques being used by attackers. So fast forward to today, we're now on version 15 of the Enterprise Attack Framework, and there's also a mobile and industrial control systems version. 5 years after EDR was really born, most agreed EDR should be part of a more comprehensive endpoint protection strategy. While it is generally a separate product, it should work hand in glove with the protection side of it. Now, that means from the protection platform, they should actually be informing the EDR solution of any activity being observed. So if there's blocking something, it should send that into the EDR solution. That's why they're really one and the same. Now, at this point, most EDR solutions, and back in 2018, when I say at this point, are mapped to the MITRE attack framework. They started to include blocking of threats from the EDR interface after they had high severity, high consequence alerts, and basically thought that they were malicious. Unfortunately, this also led to analyst burnout because there's so many artifacts that people had to sift through that it just makes it untenable. And then 2 years ago, in 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT to the world and really unleashed generative AI for the masses. Okay, now, while some people thought that Skynet was really getting born, the reality is GenAI has mostly been a chatbot with the collective knowledge base of the internet at your fingertips. An expert in anything, so long as you ask it the right question. So it could be a force multiplier if implemented correctly. Is that actually the reality, though? Because what we've been seeing is it's not coming across that way for the most part. The generative AI solutions that we're seeing in security tools today is mostly chatbots with limited models that have limited security use cases and data that either forgets or ignores the last 30 years. Now, as I mentioned, you have to know the right question to ask. So if you're a junior analyst and you don't know the right question, how effective is a tool like that going to be? Now, there's some cool marketing out there that shows these mockups, but additionally, it's not always available. So you have to question the actual return on investment or even when it's going to be available if you're looking at these types of solutions. So with that, earlier this year, we announced Trellix Wise. Now it's generally available and will be included by default with our EDR subscriptions. We took a different approach to building our GenAI, though. We really wanted to do the heavy lifting for the analysts, so we started with the hardest use cases first. First and foremost, we really wanted to build in automation, eliminate those manual tasks that just have to be done for every single alert. For example, if you need to comply with, say, NIST 2, you need to have a report attached to it. Well, thankfully, Trellix Wise does this with the click of a button, full executive summary. Second, we wanted to focus on making a tier 1 analyst really as good as a tier 3 or as close as possible. So Wise presents the advanced queries and follow-up questions to analysts so they can find the most important events and information faster than ever before. Now, lastly, it eliminates the guesswork for analysts that they actually have to do in performing an investigation and closing out an alert. How do they actually triage this? How do they return to a known good state? Do they actually have to update firewall rules, adjust the policy, or just get a user to change their password? Wise provides the recommendations in order to make this seamless. All right. I don't want to dwell too much on the bullets here on the left, but I do want to call out the screen on the right. This is Trellix Wise providing visualization of an attack, of where it started and where it progressed. This is knowledge graph. Chad's going to dig into this. So speaking of that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Chad now, who's going to get all of these things you see here on the left, including the different modes that we have, eliminating the need for coding a query with a natural language query builder, and the multilingual threat hunting. So Chad, I'm going to turn it over to you and take it away, my man.
Okay, Thanks, Joe. That was great. All right, yeah. So let's look at Wise, and I'm going to steal the share.
Please do.
Okay, so this is our EDR interface. This is the primary interface that most of our users have up. It's our monitoring interface. We do obviously have a number of other views. You can see here, we have our investigating view. This is where once you're finished triaging a threat, if you decide that you want to do further investigation, this is where those investigations would show up, and you can collect all the information related to that. The alerting view is kind of the next level of detail below monitoring. Typically, monitoring surfaces all the information an analyst would need, but if an analyst did want more information, they can go into the alerting view and see individual detections that happened and what was going on there. Performance metrics is more for SOC admin type of folks that are interested in how many investigations are open, how quickly they're being resolved, etc. We do have several different search options. Device search is when you want to dig into details about a particular device and some of the activities and artifacts that are on that device. We'll actually look at that in a minute and some of the things that Wise can do there. Real-time search is if you want to go poll devices in real time and see what activity is occurring in real time. You can do that with the real-time search. And then historical search is a look back at activities, detections that have occurred over the past 30 to 90 days. And so that you can do some research on trends and what's been happening. And we'll also look at that from a Wise perspective. These other views are really more of an administrative, so we won't go into those, but we do have those as well. So if I look at our monitoring view, again, this is our primary view. You can see up here we have a total number of threats. You can actually filter based on whether you want to see the high, mediums, or the lows. This particular demo environment only has a few highs, so can only search there. But you can come over here. You can actually select the different threats. And then, of course, you've got the different actions that you can take for a threat. So you can create an investigation from it if, again, you want to collect more details and create an investigation and do further analysis on it. You can exclude it. So if you decide that this particular threat is benign and not an issue and something that you probably will see a lot and is not something you're concerned about, you can exclude it so that it doesn't even show up going forward, or you can just dismiss it and no further action is expected, right? You can see other process attributes as far as file hashes. You can come up here and see any devices that are associated with this particular threat and some of the details there around the severity of the detections with that particular device. In many cases, we'll have multiple devices that will show up here, and you can see the detections for each of those devices here. In the threat behavior section, you can see this is where we're identifying the suspicious indicators and then the techniques that are associated with those. So you can see there's a long list of those here that you can dig into and really see what's going on. And then at the bottom, you can see process activity. So you can click on any one of these techniques, and it'll show you where in the process tree what's occurred and some of the activity that's occurring there. So that's a quick overview of our EDR interface. But now I want to actually go into Wise and talk through some of the details we have there. So really, the main difference in how you kick off Wise is this Ask Wise button. So you just click that once you've picked the threat that you want to analyze, and you can see here it's a little side drawer that pops out. You can actually resize it. I'm going to go ahead and just maximize it so it's easy to see. You can see just warning that, hey, this is AI, so be sure that you verify for accuracy. And you can actually see that we have different languages that you can select from. And we do have 9 languages available today that you can choose from. And basically what this does is it tells Wise that all of your outputs and your analysis, I want it in this particular language. It does not, as a side note, does not change anything else in the EDR interface, but it does make all of the analysis that's output from Wise in that particular language. So I only speak English, so I'm going to stick with English. The other thing to point out, there's kind of 2 modes that we have for Wise. One is an interactive mode. This is really a way to drill down into the details of the threat, and we'll walk through this in detail. But it's drill down, it's prompt based, so that you can get a lot more detail and focus on the areas that you're most interested in from as far as the threat goes. The dossier mode is really more of an executive summary. It gives you some of the same information as the interactive mode, but kind of summarizes it in a nice format that typically, if you wanted to share it with your leadership or just collaborate with others, it's a good starting point for that. So we'll look at that as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and click triage. I'm on the interactive mode. I'll click triage. And again, Wise here is looking at this particular threat, right? So the code injection sample.exe, and it's looking at the details for that. And so what you can see is that it starts with a basic summary and some of the key artifacts and points that you might want to look at, right? So just talking in this particular case, there was an execution of Mimikatz script. So obviously, very suspicious, trying to figure out what's going on. It talks through some of the key points. There is a code injection executable that was run. There was some PowerShell activity and some processes. There was a who am I, again, very suspicious. And then there were several DLLs that were created and then later deleted, which again, very suspicious, right? So giving you a quick summary and lay of the land of what's going on with this threat. Next, you can see we've got a number of prompts down here. And so I'm just going to go through these one by one so you can see what each of them does. The provide more detail is really just an expansion on the summary. Depending on the threat, sometimes there's more detail than others, and so sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's less helpful. You can see in this particular case, there's additional information such as the PID ID is here, and then there's some URLs for particular things that are available, right? But otherwise, it's just providing kind of a little bit more detail on some of the aspects of what's in the summary.
Hey, Chad.
Yes.
It's probably worth pointing out that since this is a demo environment, we do generate some of this information ourselves. So it won't be, it won't look like a live piece of malware. Instead, we'll train it and put a piece of malware sample in there, which is why it says code injection sample.exe. It's probably not always going to be that obvious.
That's right. Yeah, it won't always just call itself out like that. So that's a very good point, Joe. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so the next prompt is MITRE TTPs, right? So again, very important to kind of understand what are the tactics and techniques that are involved. This is not only is this useful from an investigation standpoint, this may be obvious to more seasoned analysts, but for more junior analysts, this is not only helpful, but it's also educational for them to understand what some of the techniques are involved and what that means, right? So here, what Wise is telling you is a description of what the technique is, as well as the actions that have been observed in this particular threat that exhibit that type of technique, right? So again, you can see there's two particular ones here, and it kind of goes into detail of what's involved there. The next is our knowledge graph, and Joe mentioned this earlier. This is really, I think, a really powerful way to view what's going on with a particular threat. And so what you can see here is that Wise has really mapped the progression of everything that's occurred within this particular threat. So you can see there's this device, it's a Windows 10 device. It executed an Explorer exe, which then also executed a code injection executable. And then you can see it's highlighted in red, which Wise is basically telling you, hey, this is one of the really suspicious pieces of activity that's occurred. You definitely want to look into this, right? And so you can see from that executable, there were a number of things that happened from there. An additional PowerShell was run that downloaded a file. Another PowerShell ran that also invoked the Mimikatz script. So again, these are highlighted in red, suggesting definitely look into these, definitely suspicious. You can also see that same PowerShell script ran a who am I, again, something that's typically, quite suspicious. And then the last set of things that you can see here is that there were several DLLs that were created and then shortly thereafter deleted, right? Again, very suspicious. So this is, again, a very easy way, even for a seasoned analyst, to come in and look at this and know within a matter of seconds exactly what's going on with this threat without having to read a bunch of text and a bunch of details. They can come in here and see it all very quickly and get a lay of the land. And then again, from a junior analyst standpoint, it's also very helpful because it helps them to understand kind of the progression of what's occurred and what the aspects of it are necessarily suspicious. So I'm going to skip the recommended actions and save that for a minute. Assess accuracy. So this is, I think, also a really cool aspect of Wise. You can actually ask Wise, how confident are you in what you're telling me? How confident are you that this is really suspicious and likely malicious? And so you can see here, it gives a quick summary, and then it goes into the reasons why it thinks that this is malicious. It talks about the processes and what's going on with some of the processes, talks about the DLLs that were created and then deleted. And then at the bottom basically tells you, yep, I'm pretty sure based on what I'm seeing here that this is definitely something suspicious is going on and you need to do more there, right? So good way just to test, what really is, right? Some threats may not actually be malicious, and Wise will call that out for you. The next prompt is device information. And here, this is just a quick way if you want to see a little bit more of the critical details of devices that are involved. You can see some of that here, type of operating system, the network information, things like that. Related breaches. This one is kind of interesting, right? This is a way for just to know other major attacks, well-known attacks that have had similar tactics and techniques that were involved. Sometimes this is more useful than others. Again, this is somewhat of an educational piece as well for the junior analysts to understand some of the things that could occur with the same set of activities that we're seeing in this particular threat. All right, so the last couple prompts here. So I'm going to go ahead and do recommended actions. It's great that we got all this information. Wise has given us a lot of context about what's going on, what's happening, why we should be worried about it. The most important part is, what do I do about it, right? And so that's where Wise, I think, is really helpful as well. Gives you kind of a bulletized list of all the different actions that it would suggest that you do. And you can see, first and foremost, investigate this code injection executable. Again, to Joe's point, it's typically not going to make it so obvious that that's what's going on, but it'll point that out for you. And then it actually tells you how to go do it, right? So using real-time search with an EDR, you can go obtain the list of processes, et cetera, right? So it actually gives you some of the steps, tells you to analyze some of the files related to it, looking at some of the network activity associated with it, and then on through a number of other activities. You can look at the user and this particular user on this device and what's going on there. And then last is you probably want to quarantine this device, because it does seem like this is pretty serious stuff, and you want to go ahead and quarantine the device. So great way to, again, take some of the guesswork out of what needs to happen next. Seasoned analysts will probably know all this stuff already, but again, good to confirm. Maybe there's something in here that they didn't think of. Junior analysts, makes it very easy for them to know what they should go do. And the last thing I wanted to point out is draft an email. Again, this is a real time saver, we think. So this is for the analyst. Once you've determined, yeah, there's something bad going on here, I need to get more details from the user of the device, Wise will actually generate an email for the analyst, right? So it gives some basic details about the device itself, some of the attributes of what's occurred and what's been observed, and then some actual questions that you want to ask the end user. Hey, have you noticed some of these strange things occurring on your device? Do you know anything about what this is, et cetera, right? And so this is an easy way for the analyst to just pop this into their email and send it off without having to copy and paste it and write it all out. The other cool part, there's actually an email button right here. And so you click that and it'll open your email application, automatically put all this text in there, and pretty much just have to hit send there. The other thing I did want to comment, we do have a rate this response. So, you can always tell us, again, this is a constant learning thing. And so you can tell us, was this helpful, was this not? And it gives you opportunity to share some feedback there. And the last thing I want to show you in this view is this print button. So when you click that, you can actually come in and you can you can see that it's basically giving you an export option. So now everything that Wise has output as an analysis is now available. You can print it, you can save it to PDF, and then send it to whoever you'd like. So it's a very easy way to collaborate and share the output of what Wise has come back with.
Which is really useful if you've got to attach this into a separate ticketing system, right?
That's exactly right. Yep. That was one of the key pieces of feedback that we had received, right? Is, hey, this is good stuff, but how do I need to work with other analysts or senior analysts, whatever, or my executives, right? How do I share it? So that was something that we wanted to make sure that we had available. So that's everything in the interactive mode. You can see a lot of different prompts there, and actually we'll look at some additional prompts here in a moment. But I do want to go back and look at Dossier mode. So I'm going to click over to Dossier mode, again, hit triage. And what you can see is we've got very similar set of prompts to what you saw in the interactive mode. So we've got the summary and the findings. We've got the tactics and techniques, known breaches, and then the suggested actions, right? So very similar. It just does it all at once without having to go through the prompts. Doesn't have quite as much detail. So depending on what you're expecting to do, a lot of our internal folks have said they start with Dossier, they see what's going on, and then if they want more detail, they'll switch over to interactive mode. All right, so with that, I want to go to the next feature that we have for Wise. And so what I'm going to do is, this is still the same threat. I actually want to go dig into this particular device and look at some of the artifacts that are involved there. So I'm going to come in here, pick the device, and I want to go to historical information about this particular device. And so what this is doing is moving us over to our device search view. And so you can see here's the device name. And this view here has, this is a view, again, specific for a single device and looking at all the artifacts associated with that device. So this is the device that was involved in the threat that we were just looking at. And then these are all the artifacts that our EDR system has captured for that particular device. And so what I want to do, I'm going to come in here, and since the name of the process was code injection, I'm going to do a search for code injection, and you can see there are several of them that have been captured for this device. So you can right click and you can click add to Wise analysis. And so I'm going to do that just for demo purposes, not all of them, but a few of them. But then you can also come in and select other items. So if you want to come in and look at executable files. And so what's cool about Wise is you can select up to 25 different artifacts from all of these different items here. You can select up to 25 items, and then you come over here and you click the Ask Wise button, and it will analyze all of those artifacts together for you. So again, it's the kind of the next level drill down from what we were looking at previously. I'm going to go ahead and just click a few of these so that we get some examples into the demo. And loaded DLLs, we'll do a couple of those. And then API calls also, just so we can see those. All right, so once we have a few of the artifacts selected, again, as an analyst, I would be picking certain ones based on what I had seen in the threat, but just wanting to show, for example purposes here, I click the Ask Wise button, and you can see this is the list of all the artifacts that I had chosen, sorted by the type of artifact, right? So these were the 3 different processes, executable, etc. So these are all the different artifacts that I've chosen to analyze. I click next, and then you get back to the same screen that we had previously, right? So you can, again, select the language, interactive or dossier mode. I'm going to go ahead and go into interactive mode because there's some new prompts that you'll actually see here. And so what you'll see is it gives you a summary, again, starting with just a basic summary of what's going on. But then you can see there's a number of new prompts here that are based on the artifacts that you selected, right? So I had selected a process, so you can analyze that, the script, files, registry. I'm going to go ahead and do an analysis for the process itself. Give it time to do the analysis and think through what's going on. And you can see here very detailed findings about this particular one, showing that it's executed by the user on the device, and gives you some detail about the PID information, has a suspicious hash value, and additional details about some of the DLLs that were loaded, etc. And so it indicates potential security incident and requires further investigation, right? So again, going into a lot of the details, so it helps you to drill down to the next level of what's happening with processes, files, scripts, DLLs, APIs, registry keys, all of those things. You can come in and Wise will analyze them for you so that you can really understand what's happening there.
And really what it's doing is taking all that cognitive load off of a junior analyst, number one, who may have no idea what he's looking at, but also just being able to quickly get in, go through it all. And then there's even at the very bottom, we've got the additional prompts that you can punch in.
That's right. And again, we've made it easy because we called it code injection, sample.exe. The bad guys won't do that typically. And so a junior analyst may not know if it's really malicious or not. And so Wise really helps to dig in and, looking at the hash values and saying, yep, this is definitely a known suspicious hash value. That's a surefire way to know that something is going on. That's right. Okay, so that's the end of the device search and the analysis. So the last thing that I wanted to show, shifting over to our search capability, there's one other really nice capability of what Wise can do. And so this is our historical search. Again, this is the search where you can come in and look at activity detections that have occurred in the last 30 to 90 days. And so typically we have a search with our EDR query language. Of course, that's means that you have to learn what the query language is. Everyone seems to have their own query language syntax, right? And so it can be difficult to remember across tools. So what Wise will do for you is actually build the queries for you. So what you can do here is you can actually just type the query in natural language. So I'm going to say, command line contains PowerShell. And what Wise is doing in real time is it takes your natural language and changes it into our query language for you and makes sure that all the syntax is correct so that you can do a simple search. Another example, let's say device name is not ASDF, right? So again, builds the query for you. You don't have to know anything about the syntax, but it builds that query for you so that you don't have to do it. The other cool thing, you can actually type in 50 different languages, this natural language search, and it will do the query building for you so that you don't have to know that language. So if we do this, again, it's just building the search for you. And let me go do this. And so now based on what was natural language search, it's built the query for you, and then you can run the query without ever having to learn the actual query language. And then it gives you all of the results that you were looking for. So that's really it, Joe.
Outstanding. All right. I think at this point, we're going to be turning it back over to Nick for some Q&A. So Nick, over to you, sir.
Thanks, Joe and Chad. As a reminder for everyone, Trellix Education Services offers exceptional training to go along with our award-winning products. If you would like to learn more, please visit the website listed on your screen to see all of our offerings. Are you wanting to learn more about upcoming Trellix product features and innovations? Join Trellix technical experts in a weekly 30-minute Tech Talk webinar series. Every week, you'll get a peek under the hood at Trellix technology and see a short demo spotlighting key capabilities from across the industry's most comprehensive portfolio of cybersecurity solutions. Now let's get our Q&A session started. I see we have several questions, but it's not too late to add your question. Please type it in the Q&A window to submit. Additionally, take a moment to fill out the survey. Your feedback and suggestions are always appreciated. What is the current Trellix EDR offering solution? There's been a few renamings, rebrandings, so we're not sure what is still current.
I'll take that one, Nick. Hey, everyone, this is Joe Malenfant. So the current Trellix EDR offering is simply Trellix EDR. If you want to package it with an EPP solution, that would be Trellix Endpoint Security. So we have Trellix Endpoint Security, which is your protection side, and then Trellix EDR, which is the detection and response side. We did recently, actually back in April, launch Wise. Now, Wise is simply the generative AI capability that is a part of Trellix EDR. I think another blog went live about it yesterday. You saw some of it today. And when you purchase Trellix EDR, it does come with Trellix Wise, basically a small amount of analysis and queries. And then if you need more, you would purchase additional add-ons for Trellix Wise. So hopefully that's clear. We are working over time to clarify some of our portfolio, right? Because XDR is a separate product, as you would imagine. And then HX is more of an on-prem EDR solution. We'll talk more about that in a future webinar. As for anything like Envision or previously known as FireEye or McAfee products, those names have all been deprecated. So now we just have Trellix Endpoint Security, Trellix EDR, as well as Trellix XDR.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one. And which of those products have an EPO on-prem integration?
Yeah, hey folks, this is Chad Roesle. I'll take that one. So most of our products actually come with licensing for EPO on-prem or SaaS. The customer gets to choose which one they want. So in particular, EDR does include licensing for EPO, again, SaaS or on-prem. So that is an option that every customer has.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one as well. Can you share when Wise will be fully available and if partners have access to it?
Very happy to say that Wise is available. We launched it officially as of yesterday. And so it should show up, and if you have an EDR tenant already, it should show up and be available now. And again, as mentioned earlier, right, there will be freemium access so that everyone that has EDR capability will be able to see what Wise can do and a limited.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one. Can you share what AI service Wise uses?
Yes, the AI service of Wise is built on top of AWS Bedrock. Is the service that we're using.
Got it. Okay, perfect. What LLM model does Wise use?
Yes, so the model that we're using, and again, this is enabled through AWS Bedrock, it's called Anthropic Claude. And so there are many different LLM models out there. We chose this one because we felt like it's got the best balance of performance, features, capabilities, and everything there.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one. Does the Wise component require a live internet connection? Would it work in an air-gapped environment?
It does require live internet connection. It is cloud-based, and so it will not work in air-gapped at this point. That is something that we've been asked already from some customers, and it is something that we will be looking at. But as of right now, a live internet connection is required.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that one as well. During analysis with Wise, is my PII data sent outside of my local region?
No. Yeah, definitely not. So we've taken great care to make sure that Wise follows all the right rules as far as protecting customers' information and data. So just to describe a little bit about how it works and how data is used by Wise. Obviously, as Wise is analyzing your telemetry and your threat information, that information is being sent to Wise, but that information stays in the same data center as your EDR tenant. Which is typically local, right? So it does not leave that data center. Also, after that data is analyzed, it's provided back to the customer, but that information is not reused for training or anything like that. There's a separate training process used for the LLMs to make sure that any customer-specific type of information is not included in that training material.
Yeah, it's probably an important point to double click on, Chad, is that we don't use any customer telemetry to actually train the models. It would just be way too expensive for us to collect all that data and actually store it. Everyone knows how expensive storage is, and it would just be untenable to actually collect all that telemetry and then figure out how to actually obfuscate it and use that as part of a training model.
That's right. Yep.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that clarity. All right, it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today's session. I want to thank everyone for joining today's webinar, and a big thank you to our speakers, Joe and Chad. As a reminder, a link to today's recorded presentation will be emailed to all registered attendees. This concludes today's webinar. Stay safe, everyone.